to start with the Lions tour, which wrapped up last week with the final test 3, and it went down to the wire, as we all kind of wanted it to. It was very dramatic, and it ended up 19-16 in favour of the hosts. The Springboks got themselves over the line in this one, and they fully deserved it. They put their authoritative stamp on it by the end. It was very one-sided by the last 10 minutes in terms of just what was happening on the pitch, whatever about the scoreline. It was just, you feel like if it had gone on another 20 minutes, it wouldn't have got any better for the Lions by the looks of it, just by the way it was progressing towards the end. But it was kind of a fair reflection of the series as well. It came down to the last quarter, last half of the last game, which is what we all wanted to see. And the Springboks were the better team. That's what I'll say for it.
I thought it was a good game. I thought they were the better team in the last half hour. I thought the game flipped on its head, perhaps at half time you could say, but also just when they got that try. I thought the Lions obviously started at breakneck speed.
Yeah.
I mean, they had that first 10 minutes with Bigger where it was kicking exchanges and trades.
Yeah.
Finn Russell comes on.
Like
we jokingly predicted, only it was 11. They weren't 30 points behind. But he did change the game. He changed the dynamic of the series. They played a lot more off 10. They upped the tempo. They managed to get to the outside in some moments. His passing was sublime. It was a little helter.
Stat that he completed more passes in his first 10 minutes of game time than Bigger did in Test 2. Bigger completed 4 passes from out half in Test 2, which is just not enough.
No, indeed. And Finn was completing all kinds of passes, got them up the pitch, got them to a superbly taken maul try, and the Springboks were in trouble. They were trying desperately to keep the pace of the game down, as they do. They were a little sluggish. They were giving up some penalties then when they were under pressure, and they were very much made to feel the quality of the Lions, I would say, in that opening period of the game.
Well, that sequence that led to the Lions try, which was another maul try admittedly, but you wouldn't know the brilliant sequence judging by the highlights you're trying to watch because they cut it out of it, but the little sequence where they caught the ball, formed a maul, and then Conan peeled around from it, found Alan Wynne, basketball passes, offloads, and they went up the other end of the pitch, and then it was from that pressure and from that pace that the penalty came.
Finn chip and gather in that sequence as well.
It was the best bit of rugby that the Lions played. It was
just attack.
It was just let's go, attacking instincts that weren't really fostered on tour. We'll get into a bit more of that conversation, but it was just great to see, and it led to the opportunity to go down the line because, as you said, once the pace got high and the Springboks felt that pressure, they did go pretty cynically to penalties at that time, and that allowed them down the corner, and then they set a very good maul for Ken Owens to get over for a try.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great sequence. Their second try and their last, unfortunately, in the test series, but it was well put together, and they kept that pressure going. They kept moving the ball well. Finn puts Liam Williams away with a super pass, and then obviously it just off the left hand. I just love his left-handed passing. It's so slick, and it just gets to the outside, and then Liam Williams has an opportunity to put in Josh Adams and doesn't.
Yes,
and that's obviously a huge moment. Now the overhead shot, I'm not convinced he actually gets there. If he gets the ball, I don't think it's 5 or 7 points on the ground. I think he takes that ball just outside the 22, Josh Adams, even if it's a perfect pass. And Reinach, I think it is, who's cutting the angle on that run. Just knowing how good the Springbok drift and scramble defense is. We were citing it
from Test 2. There was a moment like that where they did do a pullback and they found Stewie Hogg out in the wide channels, and then it turned out that even though they got outside Am and the guys were still in frame and still folding around, so there's an element of that too. Adam still had a lot of work to do, but the pass still should have gone.
Yeah, it looked like he might have been put in on the footage, but he probably wouldn't have. And that kind of goes to the point which we'll talk about in a moment, which is the Springboks defence in their 22.
Yeah.
But then the Lions subsequently go to the corner anyway. They have a penalty off that move. And then a huge moment when Tom Curry breaks from the maul and gives away a blatant truck and trailer right in front of Reynal, who, to be fair to him, where his compatriot Poit might have just not noticed that.
Yeah.
I thought Reynal had an excellent game. I thought he was communicated well, seemed well abreast of his brief, knew what he was doing as far as the game was concerned, kept it going okay. They were a little slow,
we had
perhaps.
One quirky French quality, which was that we didn't see a line out for the first 25 minutes or something. Everything was a free kick either way for closing the gap.
Going mad at them.
He was not happy with the gap. But that's if you're going to get idiosyncratic, at least he was consistent with it. It cost both teams at certain moments, and then both of them did start forming a more honest gap, and then we got the lineouts going, and we got a few good mauls out of it as well. So it was just good officiating from Reynal.
Totally. But that maul then that was motoring towards the line until Curry goes away and doesn't get the try. Such a huge moment in the game. there was lots of talk about turning down threes. Should they be doing that? And actually, the 2 tries they got on tour and that one that they should have had or in the series came from turning down threes and going to the corner. They were only really capable of scoring from close range, the Lions, as the way in terms of the way the series played out. So I didn't hate that call, but they went for it again and just didn't get it. I think Etzebeth had a steal at the line out. Khaleesi had a steal under his own posts, and that whole sequence from when the Lions were on top, all the way to the end of the first half, the Springboks just by hook or by crook held on, managed to nick a late penalty and went in 10-6 and got to reset. And that, in hindsight, of course, was the pivotal point of the game, really, when the Lions were on top, as they have been in moments throughout the series. The Springboks were a little on the rack, and they didn't really press home their advantage. They made a couple of errors. The Springbok goal line D was outstanding and held up really, really
Wasn't
well.
Just their goal line, their D all over the pitch is just phenomenal as well. Like, it's very, very, very tough to break them down. And it was great to see the Lions be more industrious with ball in hand and more dangerous with ball in hand, just by virtue of Finn being there. Meant, as you say, we played more off 10. You saw moments like that Henshaw break towards the end of the game that yielded a penalty to level it at that point. I think that was to make it 16-16. But it was a great little bust up where, again, the outside had been cut off successfully by the centres, so you go back inside, you do beat a man. I think it was Marks, he sat down and managed to bust up. One of the rare breaks, line break that we saw in the whole series, but it was by virtue of, like, Henshaw wasn't seeing that ball in Test 2 at all because they were kicking it. Like,
and also the defence was kept honest because they were stretching the pitch. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about waxing lyrical about Finn Russell. I think most of it deserved. I think certainly when I was picking a Test team, Finn would have been in my romantic team. He probably would have, I think it's a shame from injury that we didn't get to see him, and perhaps that was part of the plan that was scuppered, was Finn Russell's injury hampering him from being involved. I think we were all pretty much sold on Bigger by the time the tour came around, but Finn Russell has showed all of his quality and I think desperately needed to be involved in the other 2 games as well. But for all of that, their attack still was a little helter-skelter and was still dealt with by the scramble D for the most part. They never really sat the box down. They never really found the true edge.
And we didn't see much creativity off first phase. Like, they actually got good set piece. Like, they had moments where their scrum was on top. Like you said, they were on top in moments, and they won a few over the course of the 3 Test series. We saw some dominant scrums from the Lions. We certainly saw some good line-outs, some good clean ball, but what we didn't really see was just anything really innovative to try and target anything in that defensive line. Like, there was only ever a hit up or 2 or a maul. Like, they got even from the middle third, they were still trying to get the maul going. They didn't really try to do something incisive on first phase, which you got to think is one of the paths to success against this team, is to try and, like, when they have all their forwards occupied,
tied up in one place, 20 metres between the backline.
Like, they play old school rugby and they get criticised for it, but one of the aspects of old school rugby is that factor. It's like when the set piece is there, that's when there is a bit more space on the field to attack.
And we saw that in the Six Nations, teams using the set piece strike play to great effect, and we didn't see any of it in the series. I think that's another fair point. I think definitely the Lions will reflect on their attack and the fact that their forward pack, like Herculean efforts from the likes of Wyn Jones, who had an injured shoulder and was still managing to hustle and win scrum penalties against Malherbe.
Shift he put in was excellent, given all that, and he went off literally bandaged and walking wounded, but he did a great job.
Some of those forward pack, like the work they were getting through with Toji, of course, as always, Alan Wyn Jones as always, just getting through absolute bodies of work, but for little reward on the scoreboard in the end because of the quality of that scramble Springboks defence. And then obviously in the second half, the game kind of turned on its head. I think the Springboks got an early entry, and interestingly, like, they just set up camp out in the Lions half, and the Springboks did a really great job of fixing their discipline. I really think after the first test, for all of Razi's bluster, the actual squad itself did actually adjust to the reality.
Neil was saying exactly that as a focus as well, and the aerial contest, which they flipped entirely. Like, Test 2 was a great performance in terms of flipping that. Test 3 then, they managed to see that those dividends paid in the second half when they were under a little pressure, but they managed to exert themselves over the Lions.
They set up base camp in the Lions 22 shortly after half time, and they never really gave up a penalty. They never gave the Lions the easy out, so the Lions kept they had a couple of missed kicks from Pollard, including one on about 53 minutes, which is interesting because the try comes a few minutes later. And it was one of those scenarios where they were almost better off having missed those kicks, because the Lions weren't able to dictate anything. They were just constantly having to exit and then defend and then exit and then defend. And the Springboks were picking up a couple of penalties. Pollard doesn't get them and then you think, oh, that's a break for the Lions, but it turned out not to be, because the Lions were tiring, the Lions weren't able to dictate anything. Sometimes when the 3 points go over, it just allows everybody to reset.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why we don't always argue for going for threes. I think the Boks were blessed in some ways to miss those threes. It didn't allow the Lions to reset, to recharge, to get back into the game. They kept having to exit. And then in one key moment...
One attempted exit that had worked so well in Test 1. Ali Price up in the air for Doohan to chase up the left wing. Beautiful box kick. It was on the money. Doohan was there, but... didn't win it.
No.
Not this time.
That was it, yeah. Bounces off Visa's shoulder, and then Itoje just can't gather it. And there's another universe where he reins it in, and then their Lions are out, and all of a sudden the dynamic is different, because the Lions were still ahead in the game. And they were still very much feeling alive, but the whole tone of the game changed on one moment.
Yeah.
Lacagnan, perfect positioning, perfect turn, gets the ball away. Just everything Am does is so perfect.
On the money.
Gets it away to Leroux, who, to be fair to him,
does it
absolutely
on the money as well.
job.
Like really good. Runs in, draws Conan. Conan is covering that outside space and doing it well, but he knows to give Chesney a little bit of space. Just run in slightly infield before giving another left-handed passing. You're singing Finn's praises, but Villy, that was on the money.
Very tough skill to execute. Very tough skill.
On the run, back across your body.
That's it. And he gave a pass that was without question not forward. There wasn't even an argument for it to be forward. I mean, you have some leeway with momentum when you're moving at that clip, but it was not even close to being forward. No. It wasn't low, wasn't high. Didn't check Colby's run. Just floated into his bread basket.
Glide past up to and past Liam Williams, and then kind of fend off Cowan Dickey. You give Colby that much space. It's the equation we rarely saw. Was turn over the ball, find Colby in space, try. But it is an equation, and it does ring true. And the man doesn't score cheapies. He scores series winning or World Cup ceiling kind of ones. Like Test 2 when they're whooping the Lions comfortably, then you have them a pimpy show, and Colby's kind of quiet. But no, he'll pop up and win a series for you, no bother, or a World Cup.
That's it. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I had been thinking in advance of the series and in advance of all the games really was that if the game plays out a la that Wales South Africa match from the World Cup, which I believe finished 1916 as well.
It did. It was the exact same game. I was going to say that point as well. It's like we just watched the exact same game, and as I recall, everyone was fuming and surprised at that game as well. Apart from us, we were you look at the teams and you look at the lineups and you're like, well, they're surely just going to kick the ball all day and try and defend each other and maybe not even score 20 points between. It's like, yes, that's exactly the game we saw, and we saw it again. Gatlin did stick to his guns tactically in that when it came down to it. And ultimately it amounted to the same thing. You do really well in those exchanges. You keep the score down a bit. It's a tight game, but you don't normally win it, those games against the Boks. You just don't normally do.
And one of the reasons for that is that the Boks quietly, along with being a team that is built around set piece and defence, are extremely clinical.
Yeah.
They're very, very good at making the most out of scrappy balls. You look at even the South Africa A game, like that first try off a charge down, for example, the other one off a kick return. Yeah. Just in chaos moments when the ball breaks,
they have the talent on the wings. They know to find the guys on the wings, and the guys on the wings are lethal enough to know how to finish it, and they both do. They both had their chance to do it and did it over the course of the Test series.
So I mean, they were well put together. It was a very typically Bok performance in that regard. I mean, they weren't perfect. They were on the rack in the first half, but they did an exceptional job. A couple of huge moments from some of that forward pack in that first half,
and they were all completely bloodied by the end. Mostert had his nose thing, Etzebeth was down, Daragh was down. All three of those locks who were on the pitch were down at various points during the first half and then beyond, and everyone was bloodied and wounded, and they knew to trust their guys to come on and finish a job. Actually, to be honest, the guys even with the shiners, Mostert still played brilliantly, even though he was down getting patched up early doors
as well. There was lots of people speculating. I mean, they did keep the ball and play down a lot, and Etzebeth was down at every break and play, making sure that things were
everyone
kept
gets a breather
slow. So it was definitely interesting watching in that regard, and I can see why some people were vexed by it. But I enjoyed it, and we'd be remiss not to mention Mornay Stain coming on off the bench.
What was the quote? The more things change, the Mornay Stain's the same. I can't believe it, and yet I can. We were looking at it, it could have come down to a Mornay kick, and sure enough, it did again. The man knows how to come in and ice a series from the bench. He definitely knows that inside out and backwards. And sure, as they were saying, like, he's only 49 in 12 years, so you could still bring him on for 10 minutes at the end of the test 3 to finish it off.
Yeah.
It was great, 2 great kicks as he came in, like, from the veteran, tough kicks, but he was the man you wanted taking them.
He believed totally in his own ability to do it. You could see that he was never going to miss, and none of those kicks looked like missing or felt like he was going to miss for a moment. But I think, as you rightly point out, towards the tail end of that game, Robbie Henshaw inspired break, which led to a pen. And that aside, the Lions were really, really struggling up front. The box, the scrum had gone to pot with Mako against Koch, and then it was beyond the line out maul went to pot as well. The Springbok pack started owning it.
Yeah, and you wonder why that is. But then I looked through the team sheet, and we were noticing it as we were watching it. It's like, wait a minute, as we're into these last 15 minutes of the series, are 7 of the 8 forwards on the pitch English?
Yeah, Adam Beard was the one.
Adam Beard's the only non-English. But England always get massacred by the Box in the tight. What are we doing? Yeah. And sure enough, scrum penalty, knife into the corpse it goes, and it's just, that's why I was asserting, like, if it was to go on at that rate for another 10 minutes, I think it would have the margin would have grown rather than shrunk, is my take on it, because I think they were lost.
They were starting to lose it. They'd blown it in the first half, and I think partly they knew it, but they were also just running out of gas, like a Northern Hemisphere team on a 3-test tour at the end of a long season often do. Lions tours aside, the last test can often be a struggle and rarely goes the way of the tourists.
Yeah, that's true.
And especially if it's tight towards the tail end. What I will say, though, is that, like, and it's nothing against them themselves, like Curry and Laws, who are great players and in moments some of the better performers in the whole series. Like, Laws ends up giving away that penalty at the very end that Mornay kicks over. Curry has a few bad moments, a few penalties. He's just not the same player he was in Test Run. And I'm repeating myself ad nauseum every week talking about this, but, like,
you gotta
rotate. How can you not do sort of a back row by committee approach when you're taking this line store, when you've worked precisely no combinations in the pre-match or in the build-up warm-up games, that's what you call them.
Yeah.
Like they hadn't built any of those combinations. They had talent to burn. They had Ty Burns. They had Johnny Hills. They had Hamish Watsons.
Simmons,
Navidis, not used, and then by the end of that game, through no fault of their own, Curry and Laws, they're a shadow of themselves. They'd been put through too much work. It was just a mismanagement of resources. The fact is that Curry and Laws, as good as they are, aren't that much better than the likes of the guys we just named in the squad. To justify them playing all the minutes and the other guys playing none of the minutes, and it could have been a huge advantage that the Lions had over the Box.
It's surely true, especially if you have no set patterns or combinations, which seemingly they didn't. Like, they spent those pre-match games playing a barbarian style and having all of their wingers getting on the board, but then ultimately when it came to test match footy against a test match side, it's like, oh, we don't actually have any good cogent plans of how to break these guys down on first phase. We haven't really worked on that yet. So it's, well, how do you manage your assets in that regard? And one of the things you can do is back row. The amount of work that they ended up getting through, especially if you're doubling down on this kick tennis approach, like the back row are going to work thrice as hard as the rest of the guys on the pitch. Like they were rotating their centres. There's loads of rotation in the centres, even though the centres barely saw the ball throughout the 3 tests, and no rotation in the back row. It just seems a bit dubious.
By the end of the game, they looked a tired pack, and the Box they were coming on strong. I thought Vincent Koch, what a man to spring in halfway through the series. I thought he was inspired. Inya Kanye in his switch to Loosehead was inspired.
He's one of the players of the series. From Loosehead, he was so destructive. Test 2, sticking his tongue out, those great moments. He was awesome.
Totally. And the bomb squad of sorts. It wasn't 6-2.
It was 5-3, but it worked very well.
It worked well this week.
They had assets to use and they used them. Although Herschel, a touch of madness from him. Like, it worked out and it made the kick slightly easier. But what are you quick tapping that?
Well, no,
for?
he didn't get the.
Did he not get the 10?
He didn't get the 10. No.
He's just sorry. That's right. Yeah. So he, at least he took it from the wrong mark. That was savvy. But taking it in the first place was wild stuff.
It was very dodgy. I don't think anyone on his team was at all with him.
I don't think any of the Safa fans watching going,
no, Mornay, just back off, Herschel. It's not about you right now.
Yeah, indeed. So you'll have to curb that in future, but it didn't end up mattering. They deserved their win. And just by contrast to that 5-3 point you were making, again, my broken record is that because Finn, as they were saying, Finn's brought his kicking boots, he kicked those 4 kicks excellently. They were missiles, like halfpenny style, and then you're suddenly looking at it like, well, now we have an Elliot Daly on our bench. what's he for? I don't know. And I didn't know, and it turned out Warren didn't know, and he didn't feature. And it's like, that's the point you make, where it's like, I don't like having a guy on the bench that you're just not going to use. And that was ultimately
is not usable. You're not doing things right. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Like, and ultimately that's mismanagement of resources when you flip the two. Not much to pick between them in the end. 1916, small margin, but there are margins that you can kind of differentiate between the two sides, and the more worthy side won it.
Yeah, and if you want to pick a moment, a dynamic, I think people know this at this stage, but where the game was won more than any other area. I mean, there were a few thought the Lions didn't manage to keep the frantic ball in play tempo that they managed in the first test going, with just they had accurate infield kicks. They managed to sort of own the air and hold their own in the aerial game. But more than anything, they managed to keep the ball in play time high in that first game, which led to box tiring and led to penalties and led to ins into the game. They didn't manage to do that. But even more than that, I think, if you want to just zoom out, the game was won when the Lions had the ball and couldn't break the Springboks down, which happened a few times, even towards the end, as Finn was delivering lovely little inside passes for one of the moves that had a penalty. Like, it was a beautiful sequence from Russell, and ends up with Murray just getting caught by Etzebeth, and they go back for a penalty advantage. They went to the corner towards the end with 10 minutes to go. I think rightly people were given out saying they should go for the 3, but you see what happens when they go for the 3. They went for the 3 with 5 minutes to go, and then they didn't get really, like, they did manage to lob one deep, but the way that the game flows, the next thing that happened, as was overwhelmingly likely to happen in the next 5 minutes, was that the Boks get a penalty back and then take the lead. So it just wasn't as bright as people think it is. So they went to the corner, took the ballsy option, but again, the Springboks, their defense,
their defense won the championship for them, and that was it. That was the story, is that we had the Boks claiming their title, and rightly so, and they all do deserve it. And like, you can sing the praises of all of them getting, as they were going up, getting their medals. It was good to see Faf getting on, even Doohan getting up there on stage, even though he hadn't been involved. But they do have such a career. Dwayne.
Okay, sorry.
No, Doohan. If Doohan was flipping, Doohan traded jerseys and then he was up grabbing medals. No, Dwayne, big Dwayne as well, who I was talking about. But just the whole squad has such a unity to it, and the man, like Sia Khaleesi, the man in the middle there, a relieved and delighted figure in that shot, but he was awesome throughout the series. Probably, arguably even more so than he was in the World Cup, because they had guys like Dwayne Vermeulen, and they had other kind of share the load guys.
And he just got through an absolute body of work on defense,
especially when Peter Steff went down as well, and they didn't have him then as well, and it was a lot fell to him.
His ruck work, his defense, it was sublime. He got some huge clutch steals and clutch moments. He's a phenomenal leader, but he's also a phenomenal rugby player, and not enough people appreciate that. Well, that was what he was all about when the Boks were brutal all those years ago as well. Like, some of his best attributes were just rangy offloads and breaks in the wide channels, and if you
smashing counter
watch 2017 Boks, and I know that South African fans would be like,
no, it never happened.
I'm not watching that. But actually, if you watch that, they had like some shocking performances against the likes of the All Blacks, and in the middle of it all was Khaleesi doing awesome stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
And he was trying to drag that team, kicking and screaming all the way. And he's a super character and really, really good rugby player. And I'm kind of delighted for him, the way things have turned around, but a little gutted from a Lions point of view. But the Lions ultimately didn't deserve it.
They just didn't.
They didn't play as well. The Springboks were more clinical, found more tries, looked to have the edge. And to be honest with you, like, it in an ideal world, they would have not unleashed their main guys in the South Africa A game, kept things under wraps, and then sprung the surprise in the first test, maybe lost the second test like the Lions won the first test, and then had the third test be like the second test. But they made it harder for themselves by showing their hand, and yet they won the South Africa A game. They lost the first test, but I mean, it was tight, and they had a couple of decisions not go their way. Then they blow them away in the second test, and then in the third test they run out deserved winners. You could argue it's 3-1 as much as it's 2-1 as well. I think they were comfortably the better side. Don't think the Lions ever got things right. We'll obviously talk about them in moments to come, but ultimately, very, very good team. I mean, you have some illustrative stats to show us on their defense.
I do, yes. This was a good little one. I don't know if it comes up clear on the thing, but this is all the tries that the Boks have conceded since 2019 and the teams that have scored them. And you'll notice there that one of the stats is 2. There are only 3 sides that have managed 2, and they are all the Rugby Championship sides. We have Wallabies, we have the Argy-Bargies over there, and we have the All Blacks. But those are a while ago. Those are all in 2019.
Other than that, it's like a binary code.
It is.
It's mad looking. 2-1-1-2. Obviously, that's more of a par for course start. then from then on, one try conceded, 2 tries conceded, 0 tries conceded, 0 tries conceded, 1 try conceded, 0 tries conceded, 1 try conceded, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1.
Yeah.
Like, extraordinary defense.
Yeah.
Really is
phenomenal
extraordinary.
stuff.
And I mean, like, if you even look at the stats, I think the Lions in that last game dominated possession to a farcical degree and had plenty of chances, and looked very good and industrious in moments, as we talked about, and deserved that first try for all of that classy build-up play. Got to the edge. But even then, like, even getting to the extremities against this team, it's only the first step, because the scramble defense gets you, that vicious defensive breakdown gets you if you keep the ball in hand for a couple of phases. Want to play flowy rugby. Like, I'm very excited to see the All Blacks and the Wallabies give a go of playing flowy rugby against them, because what happened to the Lions when push came to shove is, after 3 or 4 phases, they got a little lazy on their rucking.
They did,
and then down they went, and there was the turnover every time.
And
it was just heartbreaking.
They were kind of in both camps. Like, there's 2 schools of thought. Either you can go the Joe Schmidt Ireland route of, like, over resourcing the offensive breakdown such that you can retain possession against them, even if you're a little narrow, and then go toe to toe and tight. Or you can do the Ronan O'Gara siding as KBA, which we saw a little bit from Finn as well, where he got wrapped up on the line, got a little offload away, and they can keep going. But they didn't commit fully. We saw bits and pieces of each of them, and they didn't commit fully to either as an approach. And then as such, they were a little loose. And when they did manage to find inroads, it was the Boks who were first to the ensuing breakdown, and they weren't quite savvy enough to either run an aggressive support line, or to run a nice rucking support line, or even to just get an offload away. Like, there wasn't quite the cohesion that you would have wanted, or just the kind of clarity of purpose from the Lions, really, or on-field leadership generally. Like, apart from Finn in that final test, who did change things by just coming in and playing his game, you didn't really see people in like, it was kind of a more by the motions. Like, Bigger looked like he was minding himself a little bit. He was certainly strapped up and taped all through the test series, and then ultimately went off injured. But like,
didn't get a chance,
like, it's not Bigger's fault that he threw 4 passes in. Well,
no, he's probably more coachable than Finn, and that probably stands against him. He's told to bomb it.
We saw him all through the Six Nations throwing great passes, and we saw Wales absolutely carving teams up in the wide channels, and then it comes down to test 2, and he only throws 4 because he's kicking everything.
I think we got an indication in the post-match. Like, Gats, the first thing he did was criticise Finn Russell. He called him out for like 1 or 2 bad drops, the one under the high ball, and you could tell he was just a little, I think he probably tore up the game plan, Finn, as he came out there and tried to do other things and had arguably more inroads, but ultimately it was a losing effort in the end. The Springboks, too good. They're probably, they certainly are the best team in the world right now, world champions, Lions series winners. Probably not quite the finished article. I'm curious to see. So. It became such a rigid dynamic in this series, but I'll be curious to see them match up against other teams. Be curious to see them this weekend, whether they can, move the ball a little more, whether they can develop a multi-phase. I think long term they're going to have to be a little less, like, it's not a question of going away from that, it's just a question of adding layers to their game. They're going to have to add a little bit more on their multi-phase, including, like, in moments you saw it in test 2 when they stretched one side of the field and then the other side of the field and then got the cross kick.
That was a lovely multi-phase try, but also first phase. Like, actually, if you look back at, like, Box 09 or something, and they had Habana and Peterson on either wing, not dissimilar. Again, all Bok teams have played very similar styles for as long as there have been Springboks. Like, there's an ingrained kind of part of their rugby DNA that demands this. But that old school Bok side were a little bit more aware of the opportunities that were available off set piece strike plays than this team are. I would argue
there was one very good set piece move last week, which was again still very much this Bok team model. Like, there was nothing fancy to it. It was off a scrum in the first half, and they just flashed it from the left side of the field to the right side of the field. Am drops it on the toe, puts a through ball in behind. I think this was actually the second test, sorry.
You're right.
And then Hogg gathers the ball, and because it's Hogg at fullback, and gets tackled instantly, and down he goes, and then in they are over the ball, get the jackal, and that was one of their 3-pointers, and that was almost like a Springbok set piece strike play. Wide, little grubber, pressure the fullback, get the jackal, pen.
Kick to counter ruck as well. That was something I even saw actually a Jason Robinson reflecting, kind of retrospective on what it's like to play the Boks, and he was citing like one game they absolutely got hammered in the World Cup was 36-0 or something, and he was saying that's the most difficult it's ever been for me in any rugby game. Like, you're training all week for the high ball, and then it's coming, and it's coming, and even like sometimes you can't do the pressure and you spill it. Other times you catch it and you just get run over by the stampede that comes your way, and it's like, that's just, you gotta
be a brave man to play fullback against them.
indeed, yeah.
It's definitely, they are a brilliant team.
Yeah.
And fascinating times ahead for World Rugby as well as just the Rugby Championship upcoming. But massive congratulations to the
100%.
Springboks, a huge achievement. I just tip my hat to you. I think it's one fair and square, brilliant side.
Yeah,
thoroughly deserved series win. Fair play to them.
They have dominated this Lions series and just get their just desserts. I think, and the Lions similarly will have regrets, but played a great series as well. And the last game I really enjoyed. I thought it was a tit-for-tat kind of really good contest, proper test match rugby, and it was decided on those small margins that you often cite. And I think it's one of those games that would have benefited from a crowd of some sort there, because some of those those scrum penalties that the Boks were kind of murdering the Lions slowly with by the end, they would have got bigger roars than even the Colby try, I think, as they're hoisting those guys backwards and winning a big game icing penalty.
One in particular, I can't remember what stage of the game it was at, but it was a scrum that was stopped and then slowly creaked, and then
classic Bok picture
and you can almost feel the crowd rising.
Yeah, that might have been I think that was test 2, because it was Sutherland in there, wasn't it?
Oh right, that was another one anyway. But there were so many great game icing, and it sure there's the tail end of test 2. They iced the game with 3 or 4 scrums in a row, and that would have had a huge reaction. A crowd definitely would have helped things. I think it would have been.
Well, it just colours those little moments in between where big tackles are given.
They're underrated as fans as well.
They're knowledgeable. They know what they're looking at.
But just in the stadium, I mean, they just give great colour. I mean, you really do see sort of the whole diversity of the country. They tend to be just in constant sort of groove mode, dancing, cheering, very loud. I think they're the loudest of all the Southern Hemisphere fans, apart from sometimes Argentina are brilliant as well. But so I would rank
the odd Aussie game in Suncorp can get pretty loud.
The odd one, but no, I would say that the Springbok fans are louder.
I think they certainly beat the Kiwis.
Totally.
The Kiwi fans, our little stereotype of them just sitting there going, good game, we won. Or when they lost,
that was nice footy.
Nice footy when they win, disgrace when they lose. But the expression probably stays
a little hard.
Maybe a little.
They don't have the biggest atmosphere in their games, but more power to them. But I definitely think the Springbok fans were missed a little bit.
They were.
But overall, personally, I mean, we'll get into the criticisms that have come in due course, but personally I just thought it was a great series, and congrats again to the Springboks. Thank you for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and share with your friends. And if you'd like to hear more of what we have to say, please be sure to subscribe and click that bell so you get notified when we upload our videos. And please join the comment section as well. We like to get a fun conversation going here.